Okay, here we go. 3, 2, 1. Evening, ladies and gents, boys and girls. Welcome to tonight's presentation. If you're listening into this live, welcome. If you're listening in to one of your modules in the 12 weeks, I think you're going to enjoy this one. It's very interesting, fasting for fat loss. I'm going to look at, what exactly fasting is, how applicable it is, whether it's worth you looking at, and it can actually be a valuable tool for fat loss for some people, or a complete waste of time. But we'll examine that as we go through the presentation. So first of all, a definition. It's going to sound a bit obvious, maybe, but fasting is the willful refrain from eating for a period of time. I know that sounds a bit obvious, but just to clarify, there's a very difference between fasting and starving yourself, and we'll kind of examine what that means. So fasting is obviously choosing not to eat, but it's definitely not starving yourself. And as you would see, there's a distinct difference as we go through. So first of all, let's look at some of the types of fasting that exist. Obviously, the first one, medical. We've all probably had some type of medical procedure done at some point. We're asked to come in, on an empty stomach. Don't eat anything from midnight or 1 o'clock the night before, prior to surgery. So there's that. There's obviously the religious aspect, and the first one that came to my mind is Ramadan, but there's many other different religious ceremonies or times of the month over the year where people decide not to eat. Fasting for mental health, alertness, mood, and depression, and we're going to examine that as we go through some of the ideas behind this, and also the political aspect. Hunger strikes. I think the longest someone's been on a hunger strike is, I think it's about a month. Any more than that, and you tend to die. That's not a great idea. You lose a lot of weight, but obviously the end result is not what you want. And then obviously for fat loss as well, and that's what we're going to examine tonight, and whether it's a worthwhile option for any of you guys. So first of all, I'm going to look at some examples of fasting, and some of you may have heard of these examples as we go through them. You may be aware of the terminology, or it may be completely new to you. You may have just heard fasting and not really know what that means. But the probably the most popular one that came into the market, I guess, into the arena of health, fitness, nutrition, fat loss, about 10 years ago, probably. Fasting has obviously been around thousands of years for all those different reasons, particularly religious aspects. But from a health perspective, it became popular about 10 years ago, maybe not even that. And I know that I first got introduced to it about 7-8 years ago, tried it, and I'll examine or explain some of my experiences as we go through. But probably the most popular one is what we call 16-8, an intermittent fasting. That's where you fast for 6 hours and eat in an 8-hour window. For example, you would have dinner at 8 p.m. and you would eat next day at 12. Of course, that could be 7 p.m. and eat at 11. It could be 9 p.m., eat at 1. You get the picture. The whole idea is to have a 16-hour window where you're not eating, which is not that hard when you think of it, because most of us fast in our sleep. I'd like to think that we're fasting, unless you end up having a midnight snack, probably 6 to 8 hours, maybe more, maybe a bit less. So let's say you're sleeping 11 till 7, and then you had your dinner at 8, you're only having to go, basically you're skipping breakfast and having lunch at 12. So it's not that big a deal, but it can be quite hard, especially if you're used to having breakfast. When I first tried intermittent fasting, I did the 16-8, and it was a bit of a revelation for me. I'll give you the story behind this. About 2012, so it was 8 years ago. Felt like a trapped nerve in my neck. Long story short, my spine was impinging a nerve, very, very painful. Couldn't work out for a year, lost a lot of weight. and I had to get this a spine operated on where they chisel down the spine so the nerve can move freely. It's a bit like sciatica for the upper body, very, very painful. I knew that I wouldn't be working out, but me working at not working out doesn't stop my appetite. My appetite, if anything, I was eating more food. So I got introduced to fasting, and I would do this 16/8, and it enabled me to not necessarily lose weight, but not get fat, not put weight on, because I was just skipping breakfast. Yeah. So there's our first example, 16/8, probably the most popular. 5-2 diet. You may well have heard of the 5-2, popularized by Michael Mosley. Um, this protocol requires someone to eat normally for 5 days without counting calories, and I'll come back to that in a second, explain why it doesn't usually work, and then just eat 500 calories for 2 days. Now, if you think about this, it's not magical. What you guys know about creating calorie deficit and that being the only mechanism to lose body fat, can you see by just restricting the calories to 500, and let's say someone was eating 1500 to 2000, they've automatically created a 1500 calorie deficit. If you do that for 2 days, it could be a 3000 calorie deficit. And if it was a little bit more, that's why they're losing weight. So people got hung up on this and say, oh, this 5-2 diet's amazing. I get to eat whatever I want and the weight just drops off me. No, the weight drops off you because you're in a calorie deficit. It's got nothing to do with the protocol. And the bit where people say, well, I tried the 5-2 and it didn't work, you can probably see why it wouldn't work. Even if they were very strict with their calories on the 2 days where they're eating 500, eat normally, whatever that means for 5 days, don't count in calories, people tend to overeat. So you may well only eat 500 calories on your 2 days, but if you're eating 3000 on the 5 days, the end of the week, you could be in a calorie surplus, so you wouldn't lose weight. It's just one way of enabling someone to get into a calorie deficit. Here's another example. It's called Eat, Stop, Eat. It's a bit more discipline required, and it's basically a 24-hour fast, 1 or 2 days a week. A lot, as I said, a lot more discipline required, and lots of water and black coffee. That's not, the water is actually essential. The black coffee is just my own personal preference. I've done quite a few 24-hour fasts. In the beginning, it's bloody painful. It's hard. It's boring. So you need that coffee to get you through the day. And you won't believe how much you really look forward. Oh yeah, I've got a cup of coffee with no milk, no sugar, but just it's warm. It's just a break from drinking water. So eat, stop, eat. And some people do it every other day, the eat, stop, eat principle. So they would eat Monday, skip food Tuesday, eat Wednesday, skip food Thursday. Now, let's say someone just did a 24-hour fasts in a week. Again, you can see it could be a great way of losing body fat. Someone's eating 1500, 2000 calories a day, and they literally eliminate 2 days. They've just dropped 4000 calories over the week. That could create a very, very hefty deficit. Okay. We'll look at the downsides to all of these as we go through this. I just want to give you some examples for now. OMAD, if you've ever seen that written down, it basically means 1 meal a day. So slightly different, similar to the 16/8. Eat dinner, then nothing till dinner the next day. It's basically just eating 1 meal. Again, could be very, very good for fat loss, but it could also cause people to overeat. I've tried the 1 meal a day. Now, for someone like myself that finds it very, very easy to overeat, I didn't lose that much body fat, and I suffered because I was very hungry all day. And if you eat 2000 calories for dinner, you've got to think, well, am I benefiting from it? That something like the OMAD or 1 meal a day would benefit if someone just ate a normal 500-600, even 1000-calorie dinner. Then you would see the body fat dropping off you. And it can be very, very beneficial for fat loss if you can control what you have in that evening meal. So it's not for everyone. And here's very similar to the 1 meal a day, the warrior diet. it's actually very, very similar. It's actually identical, really, but you're just extending that eating window for 4 hours. So you fast for 24 hours, eat for all your food in the 4 hour window. So I guess it's another way of doing one meal a day. But why it's slightly different is that people tend to have two meals. So, for example, if you had your dinner at 7, you would then eat nothing until maybe 4 or 5 o'clock the next day, 3 o'clock even, and eat for 3 hours. So slightly bringing it forward and just to eat. So you probably eat two meals, one at 3 and then one again at 7 or something like that. Again, it could be another way, or you could end up overeating. You can easily eat well over 2,000 calories in two meals if you've got a good appetite and if you're very hungry. But again, it could be a very useful fat loss tool if the calories are restricted within those two meals. And the philosophy behind the warrior diet, it was kind of to kind of mimic how we would eat, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 years ago. Warriors would march all day or be in battle, and then they would gorge at night and feast. And we've all seen that, the movies where you see the Romans or the Vikings, all these warriors, and obviously they didn't have time to go and do a protein shake or have a little snack during the day. They're busy chopping people's heads off and fighting and marching hundreds of miles across the landscape. They'd set up campfire, pig spit roast on the fire, and they would eat the whole pig. Again, I'm just making that up. I don't actually know that, but it's kind of meant to come from that philosophy. There's the warrior diet. Extended fasting, 72 hours. As I said, I put there, not for the faint-hearted. Extreme discipline required. Again, lots of water and more black coffee. Oh, I've done one 72-hour fast. And that's actually a picture of me after I finished my 72-hour fast. It's not, because I don't wear glasses or a bow tie. But I'll give you my findings from the 72 hours. I lost a couple of pounds in terms of weight on the scale. Was that body fat? Some of it would have been, maybe. Probably definitely water. Definitely glycogen, which is the way the body stores carbohydrates in the muscle. I just didn't eat for 3 days. And I'll give you my findings. I've done quite a few 24-hour fasts. So the first 24 hours was nothing new. And how I did this, I had dinner on Sunday and then didn't eat again until the evening of, I think it's Wednesday night. Just the thought of it now makes me think, oh God. But look, Monday, Sunday to Monday night, I'd done that often before. That was fine. Funny enough, the second day, I felt really great. 48 hours into this, I felt fantastic. And I still went to the gym. And weirdly enough, my energy levels went up. Once you got over the feeling of being hungry, and hungry is just a sensation, doesn't actually mean anything. It can actually be quite beneficial for you. Just hungry. I was like, but I realized how much our life is based around cooking and preparing food, walking to the fridge, how much I enjoy food, going in, oh, I've got this to eat. I'm looking forward to that. I'm going to make a sandwich or whatever, all these different things. You've got so much more time on your hands, but lots of water, 3 liters minimum, ideally with a good hefty pinch of salt in that water. And I was having 3 or 4 coffees a day because you get very, very cold when you don't eat for 3 days. So doing this in the winter is probably not advisable. It's definitely a summer thing for me personally. Anyway, my fingertips, nose was very cold, toes were very cold, because that's how we generate energy and keep warm, is by consuming calories. But there are some benefits of that, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But I just wanted to give you some examples. But the one thing they all have in common in terms of fat loss, they all create a calorie deficit. So there's nothing magical in fasting. There's not, you see people saying, I'm doing intermittent fasting. You mean you're skipping breakfast, mate? Or you just decided not to eat. Let's just call it what it is. It got very trendy, 7, 8, 9 years ago. And I'll be honest, I fell for it as well. Yeah, I'm doing IF. I'm doing intermittent fasting. Oh, you mean you're skipping breakfast? Well, no, but it's better than that. Where it's not. It's just skipping food, and no doubt you're going to lose weight, but only if you're in a calorie deficit. And they all create a calorie deficit, so it just really depends on what you prefer. So they all work. It really depends on your preference, tolerance, and performance and lifestyle goals. I might go into that a bit. Um, elaborate on that slightly. So your preference, you can pick one and try one, and your tolerance. So it's probably not advisable if you've never done a 16-hour fast to go for a 72-hour fast straight off the bat. You could. There's nothing wrong with doing that, but it's going to be tough. Not eating for 3 days is hard work. Tells you a lot about yourself, but not advisable. I would definitely suggest the 16-8. Performance, the 72-hour fast, although there were some benefits, you could lose body fat or definitely lose weight, but you're probably going to lose a bit of muscle. You're not going to be able to perform. Like my performance on the last day was lousy. I couldn't go to the gym. I was very tired. Strength was probably down. And in fact, I won't do a 72-hour fast again because the last day was actually not good for me. I wasn't very productive. The first 2 days I felt excellent. So again, everyone's different. Some people thrive on the 72-hour fast and think, you know what, I could probably do another 2 or 3 days. So it really depends on preference, tolerance, performance, lifestyle goals. If you've got a lot of body fat to lose, throwing in a 72-hour fast once a month is an excellent addition to your fat loss goals. And doing a weekly fast, a 24-hour fast, could be another great way to speed things up. Definitely doing 16-8. Again, the more body fat you've got to lose, maybe fasting would have some more relevance for maybe a more muscular athlete that's looking for performance. Probably not. 72-hour fast would not be a wise idea, depending on what they're doing it for. So it really depends where you are and what you want to achieve and what you want to get out of this. So let's look at some of the benefits. And I've kind of touched on a few of them as I went through those first slides automatically. But here are the purported benefits of fasting. When I say purported, because some studies show these to be true, some studies, they're kind of the jury's out, really. There's definitely a small amount of this going on, but whether it's got some real relevance in the world and whether you actually see some benefits. So enhanced mental acuity. This personally, anecdotally, on a personal level, you are more switched on when you're not eating. You do seem to be a bit more awake, tend to have a bit more mental capacity, whether that's placebo effect, because I know it's meant to be one of the benefits, but just personally, I definitely feel more switched on. Could be the fact that I've had 3 coffees before 11 a.m. I'm joking. But decreased appetite and better control of your appetite. Again, that's definitely true. After a while, once you get used to being hungry, you realize you don't have to eat. And most of us are slaves to the clock. And when we're hungry, we think we have to eat. Just because you're hungry, you don't have to eat. It won't actually do you any harm. So you get to learn how your body works, and everyone's different. Everyone's got different preference, different tolerance, but you can end up learning a lot about yourself and your own eating habits. So it could, in some people, decrease your appetite, but it could make someone even more hungry that would then overeat in the one meal. So the only way to do this is try it and see how it works for you. Decreased levels of insulin. Well, that's obvious, because if you're not eating any food, you're not going to create insulin. So insulin is obviously created by the pancreas when our blood sugar is raised. So that's not necessarily a problem for most people. But if you've got diabetes or you're pre-diabetic or have insulin resistance, which tends to be coupled with obesity, it could be a good way of decreasing those levels of insulin, which could help someone lose body fat. Remember, insulin won't make you gain body fat. You can only gain body fat if you're in a calorie surplus, and you'll only lose body fat if you're in a calorie deficit. But reducing levels of insulin, if you're potentially going to get diabetes, is obviously a good thing. So it could benefit some people. This is the sketchy area. Increased levels of hormones and neurotransmitters, GH, which is also known as growth hormone, human growth hormone, and norepinephrine, which is like adrenaline. So it's an American version of the Americans call adrenaline epinephrine. Norepinephrine is very, very similar, as in it's a stimulant neurotransmitter. So these hormones, neurotransmitters, are released in very, very small amounts. Now, I'm just going to talk about growth hormone because this is where people say, "Oh yeah, my growth hormone went through the roof." Well, growth hormone will increase when you don't eat. That's just a natural side effect of not eating. Growth hormone levels go up, and growth hormone is bodybuilders use growth hormone. People that want to lose body fat use growth hormone, and it's kind of seen like as the elixir of longevity. Um, our growth hormone is decreasing as we get older. When you're in your teens, early 20s, that's when your growth hormone is at highest. It's what keeps us young. So by injecting growth hormone, it's seen as it could be the anti-aging drug. However, when you fast, your growth hormone levels do go up in the blood, but it's probably got a very insignificant effect on things in the real world. So yeah, in your blood, you think, oh, my growth hormone's going up, but would it actually help you burn more body fat and build muscle? Probably not, because you're not eating, which means you're not anabolic. You're not getting protein into the body, and you can only build muscle when you elicit the response of my protein synthesis, and that's the body's turnover of protein. So yeah, your growth hormone might go up, but you can't build muscle if you're not eating food. So the jury's out on that. And autophagy or autophagy, English call it, Americans call it autophagy. And this is the process by which components inside the cells, including proteins, are degraded and recycled. It's almost like how the body washes itself. So it kind of gets rid of the old stuff and creates new stuff. So it's a good process. And it's said that fasting will elicit that response or autophagy, but probably only does that in extended fasting. So 72 hours, 48 or 72-hour fasting. So there's some of the benefits. There's loads of others that are purported, but I wanted to cover the main ones that you may be aware of, maybe not be aware of. But as I said, kind of jumped ahead of myself there. Don't believe the hype. Growth hormone is raised slightly, but not enough to significantly build muscle, burn body fat. And autophagy, only extended fast will do this. And is the thing, you can get autophagy by actually losing body fat. When you're in a calorie deficit, your body, as you're burning body fat, will help with that process. So you can kind of get the same effect. So maybe burning body fat with doing the occasional 72-hour fast could be a good idea. Doing 16-8 or a version of that could be a way forward. But don't fall for all the benefits that everyone says it's the most amazing thing. Yeah, it's good. It's certainly not bad, but it's definitely be overhyped. And I'm the first to admit, I put my hand up 7-8 years ago. I fell for this incredible new way of, and someone said, "Well, you mean just not eating?" Okay, yeah. So yeah, the blood markers will show these different things going on, but in the real world, does it have a significant amount of difference? Probably not. But there are some downsides to fasting. Again, these are only from a personal experience. Not everyone feels this. Of course, you're going to feel hungry, although you get used to it. You know, if you don't like feeling hungry, it's just some people just can't stand feeling hungry. I mean, they need to pull their finger out and just man up a little bit and just try it. But I was one of those people. Oh my God, I'm hungry. I have to eat. But fasting and realize, okay, I'm hungry, but do I have to eat? So you're just reframing the same sentence, same feeling, and it can change your outlook on that. So hunger's not a bad thing, but I definitely get cold. I often will fast. I'll have dinner on a Sunday night and then not eat again till Monday evening. So probably a 22 to 24-hour fast, and I'll do that if I've had a particularly heavy weekend, just to take the edge off. You know, if I know I've overeaten on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and most weekends I'll do, but not by that much. But I do sometimes have a lot more food on the weekend, as do most people. 24 hours without eating just takes the edge off. Probably still gain a little bit of body fat, but not as much as if I had breakfast, lunch, snack, and then dinner. I'll probably cut out 1,500 calories. and that can be a great little way to create a deficit. But I definitely get cold. Not everyone does, but I do. Muscle loss, but this is probably will only come from extended fasting, only 72 hours. If we were to test the amount of weight lost in 72 hours, you might see a decrease um, in muscle mass, but only small amounts. Definitely would lose some body fat. And again, not everyone, but 24 hours, probably not going to lose any muscle. 48 hours, maybe. 72 hours, maybe, probably. It really depends. But for most people that do the 72-hour fasts regularly aren't concerned with losing a little bit of body, losing a little bit of muscle. They're probably not going to be strength athletes. Social life, it's not always acceptable from societies. If you're, especially if you're doing 16/8 and it's Sunday morning and your wife or husband or partner says, "We're going to go for brunch," you say, "Well, I'm not eating till lunch." That could cause a problem. It doesn't for a lot of people, but it could. It's not the most sociable thing to say you're not eating, because social eating is very sociable activity, as we all know, and one of the biggest enjoyments for most of us. So it could, again, not everyone, people can deal with it and love it. Decrease in sports performance, maybe. Again, not everyone. It depends on the individual, the preference, the goal. If your aim is to build as much muscle and get as strong and as powerful as possible, a 72-hour fast is not going to be the way. If you're not bothered about that and you're looking at autophagy and longevity and giving your digestion a break, a 72-hour fast could be the way to go. But you're definitely not going to be performing. You're not going to be lifting maximum amount of weights. You're not going to be sprinting on that third day of that extended fast. So again, it depends on the goal, the lifestyle, the preference. And the one thing, it can mess with hormones in some women. Not all, but it can. Again, not so much 16/8. It's not going to cause too many problems, but the extended fast can play havoc with some women's hormones. So these are all things to consider. You may experience some of them, you may experience none of them, or one or two of them. It really depends. It is entirely individual. But here's what I believe fasting will do and could do for nearly all of us. One, it will definitely create a hefty calorie deficit and allow greater control around food. If you're someone that finds it hard to not overeat, by having a plan of I'm not eating, I know that sounds a bit obvious, but if you think I'm just going to have one meal today, it's just kind of taken the options out of the window. So rather than having to get up and struggling with choices or tracking calories for breakfast and lunch, if you know you're not eating, you've only got dinner to prepare for, and then all you have to do is have 1,000 or 1,200 calories for dinner, which becomes quite a large dinner for most people, but particularly for women, because they tend to eat a lot less than guys. Not everyone, but generally, men can overeat a lot easier than most women. Could be a great way of doing it. It just takes the options out of the way. I don't eat breakfast, don't eat lunch, or I don't eat breakfast. I've only got lunch and a snack and dinner to have. Could be a great way for some of you. Definitely builds discipline. I do it from a discipline perspective. I like doing it on a Sunday and not eating till Monday because, one, it feels like I shouldn't be doing it. And everyone goes, "Oh, why are you not eating?" For me, that's a good thing. Build discipline. I'm very disciplined around that. It makes me feel like I've achieved something. I get a lot more work done because I'm not spending half an hour looking in the fridge preparing food. So if you build discipline in one area of life, you could find it easier to stick to something in other areas of your life. Again, not always. It's all very, very individual. Gratitude definitely helps you appreciate your food and being grateful. If you're watching this on your laptop, on your phone right now, we've got a lot to be grateful for. And there's 7 point however many billion people on this planet, and probably a billion of them are starving as we speak. So to us to have the choice to actually say, I'm not going to eat, to choose when, that one meal a day where, oh my God, I can't imagine missing breakfast and lunch, only eating once a day. That one meal a day for hundreds of millions of people is literally life or death. And it's really shit when you think about that, when you put it into perspective. So it can be a great way to help you be grateful for what we have. However bad things seem, our worst day is probably someone else's dream. I've talked about the mental acuity and energy. I definitely get a spike in energy, as in I don't feel lethargic during the day when I'm not eating food. As you know, food in general in midday, lunchtime, carbs can spike that blood sugar, release insulin, could cause you to crash and have that mid-afternoon slump, which we've all experienced, certainly after a carb-heavy meal. So by not having food, people tend to be switched on. Me personally, I agree with that. I said it's all from personal experience. So the question is, should you fast? Well, yes and no, depends. Maybe want to try it, you should. Why not? Hopefully that's given you a few ideas on fasting. It's a big subject, and I've tried to keep it as brief as I possibly could. Give you some examples of fasting, the benefits, the downsides. My honest opinion, everyone should give it a go. You all are in the business of losing body fat. So, if anything, even if it didn't do any of the purported benefits, what we do know 100% is going to create a calorie deficit. Again, if you keep to your calories with the other meals, you could overeat, but it's definitely worth a try. It could be very beneficial for some of you if you've got more weight to lose, or at least 2 or 3 stone. If you're in that category, it's definitely worth having a look at this. And if you want to come and chat to me individually about getting the best protocol, let's book a chat and look at that on an individual basis. So that's the end of the presentation. And if you're thinking that's just a bunch of shoes, it's not. It actually spells out the end. I thought it was a nice little slide to put in there. So hopefully you enjoyed that presentation, guys. I will see you on the next module. Thank you.